right, welcome. So now I have this microphone hooked up. Ideally, I would like to get this microphone either attached to the tripod here or somewhere where I don't have to hold it. But I think for this one, I'll probably end up holding it for this video. So a couple things I want to talk about is when you're creating video content, there's if we pull from the Gary Vee vernacular, there's the macro and the micro. So the macro way to look at creating content is you can create it by going downstream or by going upstream. And I actually don't know, this is a phrase that I'm using. I don't know if this phrase comes from someone else. So if you've heard this somewhere else, please do comment below or shoot me a DM. Just let me know if you've heard this somewhere else. So the way I describe the upstream and the downstream is that for downstream, that is when you create content by creating long form content first. So think about a live interview on Instagram or Facebook or YouTube, or think about doing a podcast episode. Maybe it's not live, it's just an episode for a video podcast, for example. So that's when you create long form content first, and then where you end up investing sometimes I say like your marketing budget, but your marketing capital, your content marketing investing, a lot of that goes into the repurposing of the content because you need someone to take the long form. So it's already a large amount of footage. You need someone else to go through there, find the moments that are worth creating short form pieces of content. They pack a couple ways to say this is they pack a lot of value inside. They're memorable. They're quote unquote nuggets from the conversation. You need someone to go through and find those. Then you need someone to go through and craft them into a short form video that is also compelling, also is packed with value, and is persuasive in one way or another. Whether it's about it's persuasive about sharing an idea, challenging a norm, maybe challenging, like I said, a norm or a convention, or sharing an old idea in a new way. So that's what I call the downstream way of making content. The upstream way of making content is instead of starting with long form pieces of content, let me explain this before I fully explain the upstream. The thing with downstream is that's a method that is pretty easy to default to because we think it's easy. Once we bring someone else in, it's easy to create the content because we're quote unquote just having a conversation. And to a degree, that is true. However, if you don't have the back end video editing structures and operations and systems in place, you're going to end up with a lot of long form footage, but no short form footage. So the upstream way of making content is instead of starting with the long form, you start with the short form content. So what you do is you create what's called one-off videos. And these one-off videos are where you share an idea of how to do X, how to reduce Y, how to improve your process about Z. And you pick a prompt and you answer that prompt in a short video. What this will allow you to do, if you don't have the back end video editing structures like the way my company supplies for companies and entrepreneurs, you can still create videos, but not have to have, or at least greatly decrease the need to have someone go through your long form content and find the short form. You're creating the short form in their own buckets, if you will, in their own so-called pre-made snippets. Because when you're creating the downstream content, you have the long form content, and then you're creating what's sometimes referred to as snippets. When you go upstream, you create the short form first. And then, when you decide to make long form, you make long form content about using the prompts from the short form videos that did well for you and that were easy for you to talk about, because it's going to make the long form content easier to do for you and also better content. Because if you did the short form video well, you're not only getting the short form video for the reason I mentioned earlier, you're also able to kind of trial balloon. And that's actually a phrase I use a lot. Drop it in comment, let me know if that term doesn't make sense. But it's another way to say it is it's a test. That short form content that you're doing is a test to see, is this a good enough idea to talk at length about. So I want to share the downstream and the upstream models for creating content, and taking from the Gary V vernacular is that's a macro way of looking at creating content. And I do think that looking at things in the macro in a bigger, through a wider lens can be helpful. And what you'll find is what I tend to do is I'll take a process that, for example, creating content is not really a binary experience. It's not like yes or no, this and that, one or two, or actually if you're speaking computer talk, zeros and ones. But it can be useful when you're thinking about it in the macro of you have, okay, I can create content in two ways. I can go downstream by creating my long form first and then having an editing team create my short form, or I can create content upstream where I create my short form first and then I decide to make my long form on my best performing short form and the short form videos that were easier for me to talk about. And you'll know based on your ability to talk on those short forms, the ones that you think, oh man, I really struggled to really work through that topic, probably not ready to do a long form on that piece yet. So find the short form pieces that work for you to build into long form. So if you have questions about the downstream or the upstream ways of making content, drop a comment. Let me know. In the next video, I'm going to do another, plan to put this on the @Splain Talking YouTube. Pretty sure it's linked. The channel is linked in the Instagram @Splain Talking. The idea is to have this username @Splain Talking be used across all platforms. And I think I mentioned in my first Instagram video, which was a live, why that's the case and why, for example, I'm not using my full name on different platforms. Spoiler alert is that for some reason my name is taken on certain platforms. That's actually not me. And even though I tried to get access to some of these different handles, I was not successful and I didn't want to delay any longer. So I decided, you know what? I'm going to use my last name. I'm going to combine it with my first business that I'm currently running. Now You're Talking. So @Splain Talking. And also it's social media. So by nature of social media and doing video, you are talking. So @Splain Talking. And I think the other one that I haven't talked too much about is for Twitter. I do have the @Splain Talking on there, but I don't plan on using Twitter for video, at least not for starters. So what I did is I created an @Splain Talking Twitter that I can use to repurpose content from the YouTube down the line. But what I have right now is @Splain Tweets. And that's where I'm going to start creating written content as a way to, as I mentioned in one of my earlier videos on Instagram, that you can use to as kind of a scaffold and build into your video content. Because you can, instead of writing all your ideas in private, saving it on a private note on your phone, what you do is use Twitter publicly to do those ideas live so that you have written content before you make the video content. And it allows you to have more written content and also allows you to test some different ideas. Because when you start building an audience on Twitter, the written content that does really well probably makes sense to do a video about that. So that's actually another example of that upstream way of making content, because you're starting with short form. So in this case, you're starting with short form written content in the form of a public tweet. So for me, that would be @Splain Tweets. And then that would work into a short form video. And then of a select number of those short form videos will turn into long form YouTube videos. Okay. Now, hope you enjoy this one. I went over a good amount. I don't know what the runtime is for this one, but I'm planning to put this on @Splain Talking YouTube. It's linked in the @Splain Talking Instagram. Those are the two platforms right now. And then I also shared at the end there about Twitter. So excited to get working on that as well. And you see me smirking right now. This might sound like a lot to do, or even for yourself to start doing this, but it's taking these steps like this that it seems like a big commitment to do all these things. But it's also important, if you're trying to build a process around something, to not be afraid to get into the details at opportune times. It's like, I'm not going to be in the details of all these platforms forever, but right now I'm getting into the details so that I can build a really good process that can work within the constraints of these different quote unquote systems. If you think of YouTube as a system and Instagram as a system and Twitter as a system, ultimately I'll have a process that allows me to connect most, if not all, of these different systems. All right. I'm going to share I think I'm going to share a link to a webpage that I put together on this idea of what I can do for you in crafting your personable brand for you and your business. And this is my pitch to you. Is what I can do is I can be your digital presence manager. So I talked about in the Instagram live that I did, and as of now, I'm pretty sure it's still pinned to the top of the Instagram profile. So if you haven't already watched it and you want to get a look at that, and then rewatch this part here. So I can be a digital presence manager because what I can do is I can help you with your presence on camera. I can help you with creating videos. I can help you with the editing of videos. And then once you realize after you've had a lot of videos edited, you're going to likely, because I've seen this with my own customers, you're very likely going to want to start creating a podcast. So I can help with the podcast editing too. So we went from on-camera presence skills, creating videos, editing podcasts, and then this is where we bring it all together. Is I can be your digital presence manager to manage all of that process, all the videos, all the podcasts, but also managing you as well. Because at a certain point, you need someone to manage your ability to create content consistently and at length. It's not strictly managing the video assets, managing the editing, managing the podcasting, and it's not strictly the coaching, the consulting, the advising. It's actually both. And that umbrella that captures all of it is me as your digital presence manager. Now, I hope you enjoy this one. I will be talking with you in the next one. All right. Talk to you soon. Peace.